I have a fairy tale of sorts. My parents are Indian royals. My paternal grandmother is a direct descendant of the Indian prince Siddhartha Gautama, who later was known as a Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. Now, all of us have or know someone who has a drunk or boisterous relative that ruins Thanksgiving dinner. In those cases, they serve as an example of what not to be. But in my case, my relative Raja Rao Baksh Singh was hanged by the British in India's quest for freedom, serving in a profound way of what I could and would be. When I was 11 years old, a Caucasian boy came up to me in an American mall with his mother, touched my skin and said, "Hey, mom, look, it doesn't come off." I was asked in earnest if I rode an elephant to school. And when I replied, channeling my inner Princess Jasmine, that I rode a magic carpet, I was met with, "Oh, cool." The sarcasm utterly lost upon them. And because our indigenous identity meant that we're considered the protectors of the land and people, my family thought it's best that acculturation was barricaded with painful consequences. And what would be an uncanny harbinger of my work with Amnesty International 2 decades later, and my growing understanding of the difference between loyalty and blind loyalty, I remember in dead seriousness purposely telling the city newspaper at 18 that I had plans to marry a Black Muslim rapper who writes poetry on the side. This terrorized my aristocratic Hindu mother, who burst into tears, because I had simply struck out on all that was important: race, religion, occupational security, and prestige. A journalist later asked if I was purposely trying to rattle my mother, and yes, I was. How else do you make people see the fallacy of their ways? You hold it to light. This was my first instance of not civil, but certainly domestic disobedience. At 18, I was once again back in India doing my undergraduate in feminist leading Lady Shri Ram College in New Delhi, the same one Aung San Suu Kyi attended and whom I would once again cross paths with, this time when Amnesty International revoked from her our highest ambassador of conscience award for her unrelenting role in the Rohingya genocide. In India, people watch Bollywood actresses but would never dream of having them as a daughter-in-law, because good girls from good families don't do films or fashion shoots. Yet I had things to say, so I appeared on magazine covers and was promptly called a whore. Once a magazine cover of mine was bleached so white in a nod to India's fair skin fetish that I called it out to Al Jazeera News Channel, who said, quote, "She's no longer a supermodel, but a role model." At this time, I started developing my own theory as a psychology grad student. You either marry a gender ally or you marry your glass ceiling. For me, fortunately, it was the former. I broke with 900 years of royal history and married outside of my caste. Until date, I am called a slut weekly because I broke protocol and married a coolie, which is a derogatory term for my Tamil husband. Now, with all eyes on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding a couple years ago, their church literally and metaphorically split down the middle between races and socioeconomic status, I reflected on how reminiscent this was, being surrounded by the saffron-colored palace walls in India during a full moon night, seated by the sacred fire of our wedding and looking up and seeing a similar divide based on caste and notions of patriarchy versus liberalism. I had relatives questioning my doing a doctorate. My job, after all, was to make my husband a success. When I wanted to adopt a Rwandan boy, my Sri Lankan in-laws blocked that in a racially motivated move to protect their wealth. Now, this is what I've realized, that the family I longed for and have lost have been regained by understanding that every seeker will find their tribe. Our class is a tribe, actively challenging demonization. Amnesty's symbol of the candle with barbed wire wrapped around is symbolic of my approach. By lighting a path for others, I've lit my own. Barbed wire often looks like Christ's crown of thorns. It's a symbol of courage and light, but it also protects and warns. When Manal spoke of being called a terrorist sympathizer, I saw in her the research Amnesty publishes on the much higher rates of toxicity that women in public office face. Amnesty realizes the powers of words and images, which is similar to the podcast Yasmin created. Sana's focus on reticent healthcare workers' voices is a cultural change that Amnesty is moving towards. And Sunita's bold calling out of Islamic phobic Hindus are the exact campaigns and ethos that Amnesty is based on. So this room is filled with people who will be that effective organizer like Coffee, or simply that listening friend like Sheila. So today I ask you to become a member of Amnesty International, a Nobel Peace Prize winning organization and the world's largest organization for human rights. Free of cost, you'll be joining 10 million members around the world that take injustices personally. And for what it's worth, I still believe in fairy tales. It's just that I'm helping create new ones. In them, instead of being kissed while unconscious, sleeping beauties talking about consent, or the Little Mermaid is reflecting on the idea to change your whole self to fit into a man's world is really no choice at all. So I'm going to end with asking you to remember it's 2021, and when nothing is certain, everything is possible.